Salutations, fellow nerds. I'm Rick Y, the Wise Guy, and today is December 19th, 2024. And there seems to be a little bit of confusion out there when it comes to a little thing called Project 2025 and how Trump and his incoming administration are directly tied to it, and the likelihood that he oversees the implementation or some or most of the far-right conservative published declaration. So if you're into news, history, or general Americana, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if there are any people in your life with whom you know could benefit from the information that I am personally passionate about, share on whatever platform you so choose. It would really go a long way in making sure that there are motivated people in the world who are willing to speak truth to power. Plus, I'd be much obliged. So, Project 2025. What is it? I'm sure you've already heard the scuttlebutt about it being the worst thing on earth, but you're not aware of the actual goals. That's a fair situation for a lot of Americans because none of you are really ever meant to read it or have an inkling as to the contents therein, as it is a 920-page document of boring, dry legalese. But I am a dastardly little scamp, so I went and did some rooting around, and you'll never guess what I found. It's a document that ironically lays out all of what has been sold as conservatives' greatest fear: federal power. It details how and when the president can actually influence or even dictate certain matters without much in the way of a resistance beyond public pressure. That means us. Some of those have been specified in Project 2025 itself are things like destroying climate regulation, criminalizing consensual adult content on and off the internet, deploying the military domestically to go after illegal immigrants and their families, even if they're citizens, and help further limit access to women's rights and health care. And it all begins by dismantling what we now have and know for something newer and much more insidious. First, they're going to get rid of certain government entities and agencies, like the Departments of Commerce and the Departments of Education. It also aims to employ subject matter experts with sycophantic loyalists who have little to no experience in the field they're actually going to take over. An example of this is actually already happening, and they're the billionaires that Trump is staffing in his cabinet, like the wrestling entertainer and steroid enthusiast Linda McMahon. She's going to oversee the Department of Education, which is weird because that's something that this plans on getting rid of. How long she's going to have a job is beyond me. He also selected billionaires Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent, and Kelly Loeffler. To her credit, she was a senator, but her husband is a huge donor to Trump's political campaign, along with the other seven-figure earners. You know, real American working class heroes, you know. Even more, the guy picked the father of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner's father, who he had personally pardoned after he was imprisoned for tax evasion, fraud, and witness tampering, to also be in the cabinet. You know what they say, birds of a feather, right? There are totally no conflicts of interest here that I can see anyways. On top of all of this, the conservative blueprint calls for, interestingly enough, a Department of Government Efficiency. Huh, where have I heard that before? You know, that's an entity that hadn't ever existed until Trump took the helm and got nominated, and then so ordered it. What this aims to do is fire people and overhaul departments of Housing and Urban Affairs, Department of Justice, and the Department of Homeland Security. It's vague in this arena, but the implications are that the Homeland Security budget will be increased dramatically so as to actually enact even a fraction of what they wish to do. More cuts will go into the departments of Clean Energy, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the people who kind of watch out for bad storms, the National Weather Service, the Transportation Security Administration, the people who basically make sure folks aren't carrying bombs onto public transit systems like airplanes, and scores of other smaller government entities that have a constant and imperative role in our modern society. The reason behind doing all of this is actually simple, and they make sure to detail it in the document itself. They want to take some of these programs and privatize them so someone can start making profits off of basic necessities, the way they have in the healthcare industry. In fact, the primary federal agency they want to privatize and start turning into a profitable agency, the National Flood Insurance Program. So, if you thought the government didn't care enough when the Carolinas got hit with those nasty floods this summer, you better buckle up them bootstraps because shit's about to skyrocket in premiums. Plus, you're going to get the same runaround that health insurance companies give you when you need them to hold up their ends of the bargain. So good luck with that, because I'm sure this is exactly what all of you wanted. You made getting help in the worst times of your life even more difficult and expensive. What was it? Congratulations, you played yourself? But then it also goes on to detail how they're going to start to get rid of what's called Title IX. What this does is it bans sex discrimination in education to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And I get it. Some of you may actually be digging this because of your view on the transgender community and LGBTQ community as a whole. But the problem is when you pierce the veil of ignorance and fear, you realize that it's much more than the government and you having the right to hate on people that you don't nor wish to take the time to understand. If you do, and you are curious, I'll link a video in my comments below so you can try and wrap your head around it. Sex discrimination in education isn't merely hating on the LGBTQ community. No, it's a set of laws to protect women and girls in education spaces. Imagine your still teenage daughter turning in her freshman college report, and as she walks out of the room, the professor gives her a little spank on the butt and wink. And you, as her father, are completely incapable of doing anything about it. What about teaching your girls from an early age that they'll never amount to anything because their brains aren't as large and as capable as boys? So they should learn to be homemakers. You know, that whole barefoot in the kitchen shit. Yet instead of a reprimand, you can't actually have any recourse because that's actually going to be a curriculum. Yeah, welcome to the fresh hell that you've just stepped in. This is why it pays to stay engaged, because they are going to get gross. Additionally, Project 2025 is going to cut taxes on the super wealthy. Didn't see that coming! They're going to introduce a new system where there are those who pay 15% and those who will pay 30%. While also cutting deductions and credits and exclusions. Which ones? I don't know. It doesn't say. Currently, there are 7 tax brackets. 10%, 12%, 22%, 24%, 32%, 35%, and 37%. It may sound immediately satisfying to you because 7 seems more complicated than just 2, but how this breaks down is everyone who are now paying 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37% will get a reduction in their taxes, and those on the lowest tax brackets will see an increase. Basically, if your household income isn't pulling in $100,000 a year, you can expect your taxes to go up. It's like spending $10 on a $5 cheeseburger because you wanted the convenience over the logic. It also aims to destroy social safety net programs for pretty much everyone. So if you or anyone you know who currently relies on Medicaid or Medicare, oh well. SNAP benefits will have greater work requirements and eligibility for a program called Temporary Assistance for the Needy Families, or TANF, is all but going to disappear. And the worst of them, the elimination of Head Start, which gives medicine and social services to children under 5. So if you need help keeping up, they're taking from the poor and giving to the rich. They're going to actually target poor and starving children so as to further enrich themselves. Merry fucking Christmas. There. I said it. But the biggest load of shit that I think is attached to this whole thing is this premise that Trump has nothing to do with it. Yeah, sure. Never mind the fact that one of his agencies was developed on the very premise laid out by the plan. Never mind that the incoming vice president literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 and its agenda. Never mind that it was established and published by what's called the Heritage Foundation, who authored the whole thing. Literally, they advertise their influence on Trump on their website after he implemented 2/3 of their plan, called Mandate for Leadership, during his first term in office. So I know. Trump has personally said, I have no idea who's behind it. But oddly enough, the people behind it are also his closest advisors, who also worked in his first administration. On top of all of that, his allies are nothing short of giddy when it comes to the future and the implementation of these plans, like Steve Bannon and Roger Stone. If you're going to ignore all of these features, and indeed, choose to also ignore that the authors are his direct advisors, and that he has already implemented the Heritage Foundation's guidance, and also ignore that some of it has already been adopted by Trump, and just take the face value of the words of a man who has historically lied to your face every time he gets an opportunity, then fair. I'll concede that you could make a case that Trump is in no way tied to this, and that you can confidently tell me that none of it will be adopted by Trump. If it wasn't before, I hope it's clear now. Donald Trump and his super rich allies are planning on taking the poorest people in the United States and turning them upside down for every dime and nickel that they can shake out of them. And they're going to do it all by following the guidelines specifically laid out in Project 2025. This will be, and always has been, the plan. The only people who are making the case that it isn't are also ones who are finally waking up to climate change but still unwilling to admit that it's caused by humans. Listen, when people try to make these arguments, they're manipulating you. And they're doing so, again, into openly voting to ruin your own lives for their benefit. Stop letting them exploit you. The only way that you can ever expect to be treated properly in this world and ensure that you and your family aren't all taken for a ride by the people who have convinced you of the contrary is by staying informed, staying engaged, and staying decent. Until next time. Y'all come back now. You hear?